Hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I am honored today to be hanging out with a great author of a majority of books that are entrepreneur related. And we're going to jump into those. But first, I want to introduce Joe Sweeney, the CEO and founder of Pay It Forward Entrepreneur. How are you? Or Enterprises. Oh my gosh, see, I already messed it up, Joe. Pay It Forward Enterprises. How are you this morning?
I couldn't be better, Dave. Happy
Awesome.
Monday morning.
Well, thanks for hanging out. Oh my gosh, I got a bunch of questions. In our pre-interview, you were telling me about all these things. I was writing them down as quick as I could. So we're going to unpack as much as we can today. But I, first of all, wanted to say thank you. 6 boards, I'm assuming that are boards of directors that you're involved with. So, thanks for your service on those. Any one that you have that's your favorite that you want to give a shout out to before we start?
A lot of them, and if you don't include the top, or you don't include all of them, they'll feel hurt. But I spent a lot of time. There's a bank in Chicago, Wintrust Financial. They own Town Bank here in Milwaukee.
Okay.
I'm on actually both boards, and I have a little bit of background in the banking industry, and so I spent a lot of time on those 2 bank boards. But as I said, I'm on several boards, and I guess people ask you to be on their boards if you've been in business 35 years, you've made every mistake in the book. So people say, come on our board, maybe we can learn from your mistakes.
Sure. I suppose it was like asking your favorite kid, so I apologize. I just thought there might have been one that stuck to the top. So, but you're out and about. So tell us a little bit about Pay It Forward Enterprises and what you're up to out in today's world.
As we talked about before, one of the big challenges I have at this stage of my life is people say, what do you do? Well, I do a lot of different things. And what I've really tried to do is combine my 35 years of experience. And I feel really blessed, Dave. I've had the opportunity to combine my love of business with my passion for sports. And I've done a lot of different things. I was a owner of several manufacturing firms. I was an investment banker. I ran the Wisconsin Sports Authority, started a sports marketing and management firm, represented 3-time MVP Brett Favre, and as well as other professional athletes. And I spent a lot of time in private equity. And about 10 years ago, on a whim, I kind of wrote a book for my kids. I published it. It was called Networking as a Contact Sport. I published it, marketed it pretty hard. It ended up making the New York Times bestseller list, so everyone thought I knew what the hell I was talking about. So people would ask me to come and speak to their companies. So, so what I've done now is I've tried to take all my experiences for 35 years in business. I happened to write 4 books. I did networking was my first one, and I've tried to channel that into speaking, coaching, boards of directors. I still do a lot of private equity investments. So I do a lot of different things, but it really comes down to, I think, your life's mission. And it's really the theme of networking as a contact sport. And I think part of the reason, Dave, the book worked is it helped people transform what networking is all about. And it really comes down to my life mission. And what I say in the networking book is networking, business, and life are places we go to give and serve and not get, which is the antithesis of what most of us think. When we think of the word networking, Dave, what do we think about? Oh, I got to go to that event and I've got to get some business cards. I got to get some leads. I got a quota. I got to get. You walk out and say, Sweeney, this networking thing's a bunch of BS. It doesn't work. Versus, how can I go figure out how to help serve others? And if you really look at the great networkers, the great entrepreneurs, and the world's best salespeople, and I know that's your audience, they start from a premise that my life and my networking is a place that I can go and help others. And I don't mean to get weird or religious off the bat, but there is something from St. Francis that says it's in giving that we receive.
Sure.
And I think that's the epitome of great networking.
Absolutely. Well, and I like your words, life's mission, because part of the thing that we try and unpack here on our podcast is the intersection between personal growth and business growth. And where those connect for a human being or entrepreneur like us, there's a lot of people listening Joe, that they don't really know what their life's mission is. You know, they go through the routine every day. They get up, you know, they take their 2 weeks vacation, they get their kids to school. I mean, you know, there's a lot of that that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like the fact that you're digging a little deeper and trying to unpack that life's mission. Do you have any advice for people listening that maybe, you know, they see the entrepreneur in them, but they haven't jumped in, they haven't, you know, tried that? Do you have any advice to try and understand a little bit more about what their life's mission might be?
Yeah, as I usually say when people ask me for advice, depending upon the situation, I usually say sometimes advice is worth what it costs. And in this case, your audience, I'm not charging them. So it could be worth nothing.
Sure.
The question you brought up, Dave, is so good. And I've actually thought about it for 20 years. And so, as I said, networking was the first book. The second book is called Moving the Needle.
Okay.
Get clear, get free, and get going in your career, business, and life. And I have a chapter in there on finding your life's mission.
Okay.
And part of the reason I wrote the chapter is, Dave, it took me 50 years to figure out what my life's mission is. And I keep thinking maybe it's because I'm not that smart. I'm just an Irish guy here from Wisconsin. But that is such a critical issue. And part of the reason I wrote the chapter is I gave dozens and dozens of talks to universities around the country. And I kind of pride myself on going early and staying late because I love connecting with people. I get energy from it. And so what I heard from students is, I got to get a job. I got to get a job. I got to get a job. And it's really the wrong question. We go to college, and I could spend a lot of time talking about the problems of higher education, but we try to train people to get a job. We spend very little time in practical life skills trying to figure out, why am I here? Why am I at this university? Why am I on this earth? And so what I put together was a chapter, and I tell all the college students, and it's true with all your audience, you don't need a job. What you need to do is to figure out your life's mission. They're two different questions. And so what I did is I put together on page 46, kind of your chart on your life's mission. And so I have what I call a 4-3-2-1 formula of how to find your life's mission. And I'll explain it to you.
Sure.
Here's the formula. You take P to the fourth power plus S to the third power plus SO squared equals LM1. And what I mean by that, in order to find your life's mission, I ask people, P to the fourth power, find 4 passions. Find out things that you're passionate about. And if you don't know what your passions are, drinking beer and watching the Packers are not your life's mission. If you don't know what your passions are, think of 2 things. I say, think of the last time that you did something for 3 or 4 hours and you lost track of time. You know you're onto something. And then the other one is, think of the last time you did a job and got paid for it and said, it was so much fun, I would have done it for nothing. Like, Dave, I love connecting with you. I'd do it for nothing. In fact, I am.
Thank you.
So find 4 passions, and you add that, I said S to the third power, 3 of your strengths. What am I really good at? And if you don't know, ask your mom, ask your parents, ask your girlfriend. What do you think I'm really good at? So when you take your passions and strengths, add that, or ask yourself, how may I serve others? Serve others, SO squared. Find 2 ways to take your passions and strengths to serve others. Another way of saying that is, who will pay me to do it? Dave, I always say I'm passionate about guitar. I've got a bunch of guitars. I'm not very good at it. If I had to make a living playing guitar, I'd be one hungry guy. And so, a lot of times people say, follow your passion. No, that's just the first start of it. But if you can identify your strengths and your passions, figure out how to serve others, that will help you find LM1, your life's mission. And your readers or your people who watch this, they're not going to hear this and find their life's mission in a week.
Okay.
But I think the key to this chapter in this book, and what I'm saying is, you and I, Dave, can help people begin a process. I wish someone would have told me this at 21 when I was in
Sure.
college.
Sure.
I wouldn't have banged my head against the wall so many times trying to figure stuff out. But through that process, and a lot of trial and error and a lot of mistakes, I was able to come up with this. And when the three converge, just what you said at the beginning, your strengths, your passions to serve others, that's your sweet zone. And we've all had moments and times where we've operated in that sweet zone, or as I call our zone of genius,
Okay.
but not very often. So I think the key is to identify those passion strengths, and you can't do it, Dave, if you're on your iPhone all the time, if you're busy all the time. You got to get quiet. You got to go for walks. You got to do something where you can think and then put all this together and then create a path for your life's journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's awesome. Oh my gosh, I took a ton of notes. Thank you for sharing that. I think about some of the issues that you brought up, and I'm thinking to myself, an entrepreneur was on board until you said stop doing, phone, take a walk. You start thinking about investing time in yourself, and then it just it gets it crosses that line where, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't have time to do that. I don't see the value in that. How did you determine that was so critical in finding, these passions for yourself?
Well, I think, Dave, when people say, what's your number one passion? I've got a lot of them. But as I reflected, my number one passion is to understand human behavior.
Okay.
What makes people tick? Why do people do what they do in life? And so to get back to your original question, what really got me onto that was not only my own personal experience, but watching hundreds and hundreds of people, what I would call either lost or drifting aimlessly through life.
Right.
And I've had a lot of friends die, spent some time on deathbeds with people. And maybe 10, 12 years ago, I spent some time doing hospice work and listening to people on their deathbed. And it's interesting, Dave, most people don't regret the things they do in life. They regret the things they didn't do.
Mm.
And so that was sort of a wake-up call for me to take action. And as I absorbed a lot of that and continued to write books, I thought it was important to take that message and put it into the books. But to answer your real question is, why is that so important? It's because we're all dead a long time. And if you go to the end of your life and kind of reflect on your life, what worked, what didn't work, and I do this in some of my seminars, and then I have people come back today and put together a game plan between now and the time they leave this earth. And you can't do that without a life's mission statement or without life purpose.
Okay.
And I just find, and I don't mean to sound old, in today's society, we've missed that. Mm-hmm. We spend so much time putting things on Facebook, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and look at me. And we kind of miss the big picture.
Sure. And I like what you said, and I wrote down live intentionally. And I think that there's so many people, like you said, that just kind of, they live just, they drift, like you said. And that's why when I wrote my book, Growing on Purpose, is I ran into a lot of people, and still do, that grow by mistake. So, I really appreciate that intentionality where there's actually a formula, there's a thought process, there's something to do. Because, a lot of high D people in the disc, a lot of driven people, they just give me something to do, give me a bullet point, give me a formula, like you said, and then I'll just jump on that thing right away. So once we pass the 4 Ps, I'm thinking to myself, the 3 strengths. I mean, I don't know about your, research, but what I found is a lot of people can talk a lot about their problems and a lot about their negative experiences and their shortcomings. They really struggle saying what they're good at, and I even when you, like in an interview, job interview, it's hard when you say, what are some of your strengths? I mean, we struggle with that. So you suggest ask other people. which then you have to find somebody that's going to be a confidant, is somebody that you trust. I mean, I see like a lot of blind spots there. Is if I ask you, Joe, what are my strengths? If we knew each other well enough, where
Your
you
good looking hair. I'll tell you that right now.
thank you. All right.
Willie Matthews hair.
There you go. Wow. Well, good. Well, thanks. For those of you that aren't watching, then you're listening, you know, I have a little bit longer hair than Joe. So I think that was just a little jealousy that came out, but that's all right.
Green with envy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, Dave, let me drill down on what you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to get a confidant. In several of my books, I have a chapter and I say, who's your wingman or wingwoman?
Right.
Those are what I would call your personal board of directors. And if you study great entrepreneurs and even great salespeople, most of them have wingmen and wingwomen that kind of watch their back as they go through this thing called their career in life. And I think the loneliest people in the world are entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And here's why. They have an idea, they go there, they kind of try to crush it on their own. They're driven, they're ambitious, and sometimes they get lost. If you study big corporations, and again, I've been on 27 or 28 boards over the last 35 years, all the large corporations have something called a board of directors. And the reason they have a board of directors is to help the CEO when he or she gets stuck. And so the question I have for all your listeners, where do you go when you get stuck? And entrepreneurs and even salespeople say, well, it's just me, Dave. I'm just starting this little business.
Sure.
I don't need a board.
Right.
I would argue that person needs a board more than a big CEO.
Sure.
Because we all get stuck. And where do we go? So you asked the question about you need a confidant to figure out your strengths. You're right, but it's also deeper and bigger than that. If you're growing a business, try to put together your own wingmen, wingwomen, or your own board of directors. And the number one question people ask me is, who should I get? But I always use this rule. Find people who play in areas that you find work. Find people who play in areas that you find work. So Dave, if I'm really good at a technical aspect of my startup entrepreneur company, but I don't know anybody, and you're Mr. Networking out in Waukesha County, and that's my market.
Sure.
Hey, Dave, I need you on my team.
Sure.
So find people that can really help you and really fill the gaps in and put the holes in the dike where you're not good.
Sure. And I think for us as in, you know, you coach, I coach, you know, I think that's one of the biggest values that a coach can add to somebody's life. I mean, I look at Tiger Woods and I look at Michael Jordan, and I think two of the best athletes ever. And they, for whatever reason, needed a coach. And I look at Phil Jackson and I think, what could Phil Jackson possibly, you know, tell Michael Jordan? But you know what? In seeing that relationship, they really relied on each other, you know, for success. So if you're listening and you don't have somebody, find somebody, to Joe's point, because that my next book is on business blind spots that I'm working on right now. And it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. So that's why in your car, you have rear view mirror, you have side mirrors to see those areas. Well, in your business, you don't have those necessarily. So you need somebody to come alongside you and help you. So exactly. I'm assuming on your end, Joe, as a coach, that's what your kind of one of your responsibilities is to kind of help somebody with their blind spots or help them with something they don't necessarily see.
Exactly. And Dave, one of the reasons I'm so high on coaching, when I reflect on 35, 37 years of business, I realize I've had coaches all the time. I've had a business coach, even in my free time. I have a swim coach. When I was playing golf, I had a golf coach. I picked up tennis. I have a tennis coach. When I did strength work, I had a strength coach. So I have coaches in every area of something that I want to get good at.
That's awesome.
I picked up guitar. I have a guitar coach, a guitar teacher. So yeah, I'm a big believer in it. And I think one of the things a coach can not only help you with your blind spots, they can accelerate things in your own development that you can't do on your own.
Sure. Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, and I think because you mentioned earlier about the Navy SEALs, so you've done some work there. There's got to be in kind of where the ego and the coaching. I mean, who's this guy telling me what to do? I know way more than him, whether it's a Navy SEAL or an entrepreneur. I think that's one of the biggest things that I find when I coach people is that tendency to, question me. And I don't mind people questioning me. That's not the issue. It's why are you questioning? Are you really trying to learn more? Are you trying to press the boundaries, or do you just not trust, somebody, or do you think you know it all? So how did you, navigate through with the Navy SEALs, and unpack that for us a little bit and tell us what you do for them?
Well, about 7 years ago, I got a call from, I gave some talks to the military and really on networking. And I gave a talk down in Fort Sheridan down in Chicago. And they had, I believe it was 800 returning troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. And it was one of those things you speak to, Dave. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This one really clicked. And my purpose in my talk was how to help them re-engage in the community and kind of network to find what's next in their life.
Sure.
And it went really well. Kind of a long story short, the guy there talked to some people out in San Diego, and the Navy SEALs were having a really hard time transitioning from the military life to the civilian life.
Okay.
And so I went out there and did an experiment 6.5 years ago, and it worked. I dealt with a small group of Navy SEALs, and it's really through a group called the Honor Foundation. And I was their first faculty member, put together this program. And I believe we're at like 670 elite military that have gone through that.
Wow.
And part of, you say, why would they listen to me? I think one of the things that was, that gave me credibility with them is in a previous life, when I was a sports agent, I represented 24 pro athletes and coaches. And at the beginning of my talk with the Navy SEALs, I kind of give that background. And I say there are 5 challenges with pro athletes when they transition from the professional sports life to civilian life or the normal life. And those are identical to the 5 challenges with the Navy SEAL.
Gotcha.
And so I got their attention. And so I go through the 5 challenges and help them transition from the military life to the civilian life. And I use the material in all 4 of my books. And Dave, I don't know what it is, but I seem to resonate a lot with entrepreneurs, salespeople, military, and sports people. Not that I don't work with government and educational institutions, but the programs work, and it's one of the things that gives me one of the most meaning in my life right now. I love doing it. And we've expanded it to the East Coast to Virginia Beach. There's SEAL teams on the East Coast and West Coast. And I just started with a group called the Marine Raiders. They're kind of the Navy SEALs of the Marines.
Okay.
So I spend about 6 or 7 times a year. I'll go through that cycle and work with our elite military that's transitioned.
Wow. So are you doing it virtually now, or do you still get to?
Well, I did my last one in person down in Virginia Beach in February. And now I do it virtual. In fact, I've got one tomorrow night. I've got another session tomorrow night. But it's not the same. You know this. You do this. Yeah. When you go out and speak and when you coach, there's an energy exchange between you and the people.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that. And a lot of people joke and say, Sweeney, you're doing a lot of speaking. What are you doing? And I tell people it's kind of hard to tell people that networking is a contact sport in an age of the pandemic and isolation. But we're working around it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for helping them out. That's got to be a really challenging spot. We as, the general public see a lot of stuff on TV and you never know what's accurate, what's not. So, you're living it, you're right in it. So, that's awesome that they're trying to integrate back into society as best they can. It's things we never even thought of, you do a job and then at the end of the day you come home and it's real easy to integrate into home, right? For most of us, obviously it's a whole different ballgame with them and there are situations that we don't even really understand. So, and that's where I think the balance between the personal life and, the business growth and personal growth, because there again, they look at serving in the military as a business. I mean, that's their career, that's their passion. Hopefully they found that, but then they're kind of at the end of that. Both the sports, professionals and military professionals have that kind of ending. That's got to really be tough for them to kind of come to grips with the fact that that's done. Now we're going to try and open up another chapter. That's got to be a really tough transition.
It's a challenge. Just to quickly summarize the 5 challenges, and it's the same when people retire or have a transition in their career. Number one fear that the SEALs have, just like the pro athletes, I'll never find anything as meaningful as what I'm doing right now. Athletes go out and perform in front of 30 million people.
Right.
Navy SEALs go on high adrenaline missions, and they found something, but their careers are short. The average life in the NFL is 3.2 years. That's why the NFL stands for not for long. Military, or the elite military, their bodies break down in their early to mid 30s.
Okay.
And so they found a mission. Now they got to refine it again. The second challenge they have, athletes and elite people, the greatest years of my life are behind me. And I get them to stop and say, wait. You're going to live 33,000 days. You've only lived, 12,000 days. You still have another 20,000 days.
Sure.
Here's what's interesting, Dave. For a lot of people in the military and sports, their number one challenge is to overcome the fear of networking. People say, what are you talking about? SEALs work in teams.
Yeah.
Football players work together. Here's what's interesting. They have a hard time networking outside the locker room or outside the SEAL team. So I do a whole day on how to get reconnected and show them the tools of networking and connection. Wow. And so it's funny how they're the same. And so I spend a lot of time kind of working through overcoming their challenges.
Sure. So you got 2, what's the other 3?
No, that's 3. I'll never find anything as meaningful as what I've done now.
Right.
My greatest years are behind me.
Yep.
The fear of networking. And here's a big one, finances.
Okay.
People say, why would pro athletes have a hard time with finances? They make $1 gazillion. Yeah, but they only do it for a short period of time. And unfortunately, they spend what they make and then they get accustomed to a lifestyle.
Sure.
But even the SEALs are trying to figure out, or the military, how do I repackage and reframe my financial game plan moving forward? Because they don't make a lot of money and they got to figure out what to do next. Many of them leave injured. They got a bad shoulder, bad knee. And so I help them try to work through that. Sure. But, that's kind of the best thing about that is working with athletes, working with the elite military. It kind of scratches that curiosity itch I had when I told you my number one passion is understanding human behavior.
Sure.
How is it, Dave, that someone can win back-to-back NFL MVPs, Brett Favre? Why is it that some people can go through the torturous training of becoming a Navy SEAL? And then why is it some people can't get out of bed in the morning? What are the tools? What are the traits? What are the habits? I've studied all of them, and I've tried to put those together in the books and take what they have and help people on their own journeys.
Wow. Well, and that's a good segue into Moving the Needle, which is the book that you referred to earlier. So, I mean, there's probably people right now in that stuck position, So what's your suggestion? You talked about clarify, get clarity, get free, and get going. Let's unpack those a little bit if you're okay with that. Because I'm guessing there are people stuck. I know I run into people, they're stuck. They might see what one of the paths are for them to take, but they're really kind of stuck with fear. They're afraid to move. How do you address those people when you run into them?
That is a great question. That's funny, Dave. So here's the book. If you look on the inside cover, the first 2 words say, I'm stuck. And so that's how it starts.
Sure.
Part of the reason that I wrote the book is after I wrote networking, I went out and did a lot of talks. And it took me a couple hundred talks, because I'm not that smart, as I told you. It takes me a little bit longer to pick things up. I kept hearing people say, that was really good. Can you come back and continue to help our team move the needle? And after I heard the term numerous times, can you help us move the needle? It made me stop and think, what prevents us from moving the needle? And I spent a lot of time thinking, researching, and it's really, in my opinion, three things. It's an inability to get clear. Clarity is a key. An inability to get free. And people say, what are you talking about getting free? A lot of it, it's eliminating what you just said, Dave, self-defeating thoughts.
Okay.
And the other thing that I find today in this age of entitlement, it's taking 100% responsibility. You can't be free if you're blaming your ex or your mom or your boyfriend or your boss for every problem in your life. And then sometimes we just need tools to help us get going. So I called it moving the needle, get clear, get free, and get going in your career, business, and life. And the book is really three sections on how do we get clear, how do we get free, and then the last third of the book are tools to help us when we are stuck to re-engage and get going.
Wow, that's really good. I think that, the clarity, again, surface level, I don't want, in my mind, I hear clarity and I think, okay, Joe, this is going to take, again, time and energy, which I just don't have. Just tell me what to do, will you? I mean, I think that as we grow in the society, we're spending less and less time just stopping and being, and thinking, whatever, meditating, praying, whatever. There's just less and less time of sitting and being self-aware. How in the world, you got to address that for us? What are some tips to help us with that?
Here, let's start with this, Dave. It is part of the reason I wrote this. I saw a lot of people climbing up that ladder, working hard, doing everything in life. And I'm a little bit older than you. And then I see they get to the top of the ladder and they realize, oh, shucks, it's on the wrong house. I did all of it. And so you say, well, I don't have time to get clear.
Yeah.
What I say in this book is to get clear, you've got to get quiet. And that's our number one challenge today, Dave, because we live on this thing.
Right.
And we're always going. And so that whole theme of getting quiet, I thought about the question you just asked, Dave. I've heard 1,000 times, literally 1,000 times. So that's why I wrote the third book, After Further Review. And you say I don't have time, but I use this book, After Further Review. The book starts out, Dave, at an NFL football game. And when a coach doesn't like a call, he throws the red challenge flag, right?
Okay.
So the stadium gets quiet. That's what we need to do. And the ref reflects and looks at the play from every different angle. And when he finally gets the call right, he goes to the 50-yard line, he turns his mic on, and what does he say, Dave?
Yep, after further review.
You're a smart guy.
The play stands.
This answers your question. If an NFL official could do that at a football game in order to get the call right, what if we could all do that with our own lives? And I've spoken in front of tens and tens of thousands of people. And the number one challenge everyone has, I think, is we don't go into that locker room and get quiet and figure out what the hell's working in our life, what's not working, and how do I make my halftime adjustments? And you can have halftime at 28, 58, 78. The challenge I find is that most people never go in the locker room.
Sure.
They live their life. You just said they're busy doing all that. And one day they wake up, they're 86 years old, and they're dying on their deathbed. So the purpose of this book is to force the reader to go into the locker room. And it's based on like 12 football themes. Because it's kind of a football book.
Sure.
But the subtitle is how reflection is what you're talking about, getting quiet and reflecting, how reflection and taking action can turn all your some days into today. And it's basically go in that locker room. And I do this in coaching. You do the same thing. I always start by asking 3 questions. What's working in your life? What's not working? And how can I help?
Sure.
And this book, actually, Lou Holtz, coach at Notre Dame, did the forward of it. He was awesome to work with. And he added a lot to the book on the whole football themes and that type of thing. And so I tried to use football themes and apply them to life. But it gets back to your original question. You can't get clear unless you go in that locker room and get quiet. And that's the hardest thing for us today to do today, Dave. Because somehow I say, Dave, how you doing? Oh, I'm so busy, Joe. I'm so busy. What are you really saying? Look at me, Joe. I am so important because I'm so busy. And I think we're sick with a disease called busyness, which eliminates people from going into that locker room and getting quiet.
Don't I get a badge? You know, if I pull an all-nighter, I should be able to have these badges of all these busy things that I've done, right? And I know that that's really important to some people. I have to say practically though, so this is where I want to challenge you a little bit, I want to dig a little deeper, you know, so let's just say, because I think of retreats or I think of all, you know, when I think about getting quiet and just sitting there, I know what I struggle with is, you know, all these thoughts come into my mind and all this stuff of, oh my gosh, I got to do this and maybe I should try that. I mean, when I sit to get quiet, unless I write stuff down, it's really like mayhem in my brain, you know, because there's all this stuff going on and I want to say, okay, I have an idea on whatever the idea is. Let's say I want to work on, you know, my life's mission. And before you know it, I'm on every other thought except life's mission. Do your books or does any of your research or your experience, do you have any tips for somebody like me that might try it, but, you know, it doesn't go as planned? It doesn't, you know, a miraculously magical list shows up. It doesn't work that way. At least it hasn't for me. So is there a way to kind of, I mean, what do you do in that mayhem, I guess, Joe?
Well, you say mayhem. We have mayhem in our life because we've created mayhem.
Okay.
And everyone is in a different season of life. What I talk about in this book, the football book, there are 4 quarters in a game of football. There's 4 quarters in the game of life.
Okay.
And how old are you?
56.
56. Did you still have kids at home? Do you have any
Nope.
kids? Or?
I got 4 grandkids already, so I'm good.
Okay, so they're gone. So you're in the 3rd quarter of life.
Okay.
And so you say, how do I find time on, you know, when you say get quiet, and you mentioned this, I'm not saying you have to go to a retreat for a week.
Yep.
You don't have to meditate for 2 hours a day, because I talk to a lot of people in the 2nd quarter. People are trying to build their careers. They're trying to raise a family. They're trying to keep a husband or wife connected. They're trying to take care of their mom. They got all these things. And they say, Sweeney, you want me to meditate for 2 hours a day? I don't have time to go to the bathroom.
Right.
So each quarter of life has different challenges. I'm in the 3rd quarter. You're in the 3rd quarter. It's a different quarter. And so what I say is, if you don't have time, just take 5 minutes in the morning. And so one of the tools I talk about, I think, in Moving the Needle is how to bookend your days. Okay. How to start with 5 minutes of quiet time in the morning and then end your evening. And I have things to write down at the end of the day, to review the day, to help give you clarity. But people say, I don't even have time, 5 minutes to work on my life. I say, if you don't have 5 minutes to work on your life, you don't have a life. And I can't.
Yeah.
So when people say, well, I don't have time for this, I don't have time to get this thing right. Well, you know, you're not going to have time to get it right the 2nd time if you don't do it right the 1st time. And so I say, whatever season of life you're in, try to understand that and try to create, that's why I go back to the human behavior thing, some rituals, some habits to help really get you centered. And I get the busyness. I had 4 kids running a couple of companies at the same, I get all that.
Sure.
But if you don't take time in that 2nd quarter, I find that when you go into halftime, you go, oh my God, did I screw up in that quarter? And if you don't take time, watch it. You can see it now with the pandemic. Alcohol,
Yep.
use has increased, drug use is increased. I think you'll find during the 7 or 8 months, domestic abuse has gone up.
Yep.
I wonder how great our kids are really being educated by this, stay at home.
Sure.
A lot of challenges today.
Right.
And I think the number one thing we're all needing more than anything is this thing called connection. When I use the word networking, I'm really talking about how do we connect with
Sure.
others?
Sure.
How do we connect deeper with ourselves, with other people, and to a power greater than us? But Dave, that's not the things you and I talk about at the cocktail parties, is it?
Right. No, no, and that's what's so awesome about this is we get to unpack things that we just typically are too busy to think about. So from the clarity piece then is the get free piece. And I think the self-defeating thoughts that you talked about, it's so easy for us. I don't know if it's a society thing or what, but it's so easy for us to focus on the negative, and that's one of the reasons that I call my company Positive Polarity, because I want to, I want people to think of the positive, because we get to choose each day if we look at the bad stuff or the good stuff. And sometimes, we think we don't have a choice, but I believe we have a choice pretty much all the time. What do you look at when you're talking about getting free? What is, once you sit with and get your clarity, then you jump into this get free piece. What does that look like?
Okay, let's walk through that process. So
Yeah.
I've taken time, whether it's 5 minutes or I've done a retreat, or I get a little clear. I have a little more clarity. And you're not going to wake up, Dave, someday and say, oh, I got to figure it out. This is a process. And again, I can't cure anyone, or I can't really help anyone solve everything, but you and I can help them begin a process. So let's say we get quiet, we get clear. Then what happens? All sorts of things bubble up. Just because you're clear, a lot of times you go, oh crap. Think of this, Dave. Think of a pond when it's really wavy and the winds are coming. You can't see the bottom. You don't have clarity. And then what happens is once it calms, then what happens? You can start to see.
Sure.
You can start to see the bottom. The water gets clear. But here's what you find. You find a bicycle tire, some Coke cans at the bottom. And when we get quiet, when we go inside, a lot of us don't like what we see. So you know what we do? We shut it down and go back and get busy again.
Right. Yeah.
So just getting clear isn't the answer. Once you get clear, you got to go inside and see what's good, what's not good, and make some adjustments. And so what most people do is they have all these self-defeating thoughts. Well, I want to change my job. Oh, but I can't do that. They're clear. They got to get out of this toxic job. Oh, but I can't do that. So getting free is eliminating self-defeating thoughts. In my experience has been, and I don't know if it's America today and the people I deal with, people can't get free because they don't take 100% responsibility.
Sure.
Or, I'd be a better salesman, Dave, if my dad didn't hurt my self-esteem.
Sure.
Or, my boyfriend won't let me do this. And so what I find is that what I call this kind of an age of entitlement, and usually an entitlement is derived from the fact of victimhood. I am a victim.
Yep.
I was treated poorly. And the reason people want to become a victim, it creates a path for lifelong entitlement. Mm-hmm. Dave, if I can figure out that somehow you damaged me and I'm a victim, you're going to pay for it.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So when I listen to people talk about how they're victimized, and I'll stay out of politics for that.
Sure.
When people want to become a victim, it's a license for them to have a lifelong entitlement.
Sure. And it is so
clear than getting free.
Yeah. It's so easy, like you said, in that case, Joe, to blame others. I mean, when I train sales professionals, it's the industry, it's the economy, it's the government, it's, the competitor, it's the customer, it's my boss. I mean, I've heard pretty much everything on what really is. And it's rare to find somebody that says, you know what, I just didn't try hard enough. I didn't care. I don't have the ability. It's on me. And in my conflict resolution training that I do, when I have two people that are like can't talk to each other on either side of me, and I'm trying to resolve some conflict for these two, the reality is I've yet to have this in 20 years of doing it. I've yet to have somebody that's 100% to blame and 0% to blame. There's always responsibility that both sides have. Where in the world did that come from, that I don't want to take responsibility for what I did or didn't do? I mean, have you found any, link to where the heck this came from? Because it's killing us as a country.
Well, it's gone on for generations, but if I'm going to be critical, I'll say I'm to blame. I'm part of the problem.
Okay.
Because I think what's happened the past few generations, Dave, is we always want our kids to have a better life than we do. It's natural. But what I have found is that families have become so kids-centered, and we have this, for some reason, I don't know why, we don't want our kids to experience any pain or any sharp points in life. And Dave,
Sure.
Reflect on your life. Your greatest growth has come when you have experienced a problem. And so I think of the greatest generation. I'm a World War II nut. I've got a whole World War II thing here in my office. I've studied it, how the greatest generation, and people say, today's the greatest generation. I think when you raise a generation that does not want to experience pain, suffering, and I blame a lot of baby boomer parents like me,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't teach kids how to fail. You want to make sure your kids don't fail. I always say this, that if you look at your greatest passions in life, and some of our life's missions are born out of our unmet needs and our deepest wounds. Mm. And think about this. You say, well, what are you talking about? Think about Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. All of those women, I know a lot of them, have experienced a death by a husband or a kid that died from a drunk driver. That became their mission, but it was born out of their deepest wound. Sure. And they found passion. If you don't have any wounds, or you don't have any experience of failure, how the hell are you going to grow? Yeah. And I think that's the disconnect that we have. And I'm to blame. I'm not pointing fingers at millennials but when you try to avoid pain, which is a process in life, a natural process, you don't grow. And I think that's part of the problem for this whole entitlement. And Dave, if you study the whole concept of entitlement, and I have, mm-hmm. if you know anyone that's got an entitlement mentality, eventually they all turn out angry people. Mm. They're just angry. Yeah. So people say, how do you solve that? Somehow you got to get them to reflect and take them from a mindset of entitlement to gratitude. People say, oh, my life sucks. I have nothing to be grateful for. Stop. Are you breathing? Look at the sunshine. And that's one of the things that, and not to talk about all these books, but I just wrote a book called A Light Shines Through Us. And it's really a book about a relationship I had with a 95-year-old nun, Sister Camille. And the reason I wrote the book is, and I called it A Light Shines Through Us, she had a light that shone through her. And her number one thing in life is she was grateful every day. So I say the world needs two things right now: a cure for the pandemic and a message that a light can shine through us even in these dark times. And you just alluded to it, Dave.
Sure. And that makes sense, from a clarity to freedom to then that third part is get going. So what you're saying then is, and we talk a lot about that too, is it starts internally, and you have to kind of deal with yourself, work through some of the things going on with yourself before you're able to, help other people. And I always laugh when they now say in an airport or on an airplane to put your mask on your kid first, and then you can put yours on. It seems kind of counter,
It's the opposite. Put it on you,
and then yeah. Sorry, thank you. It seems like, oh my gosh, I got to help them first. That's what I need to do. But the reality is if you're struggling with oxygen, you're not going to be, successful. So I
Right.
think it, although at the surface it doesn't make sense, when you dig down, it does. And then it's like, okay, get going, you know. My parents said, don't just stand there, do something, I mean, that was like, that was like how I was raised. And then as I'm getting older, I'm realizing, don't just do something, stand there. It's kind of like a different take on it. And it's like, oh my gosh, there is that little bit of reflection, but then there's the ability to go. So what does the going look like, in that last part of the book?
Well, I try to outline the best tools that I found, again, in my 60 years on this earth. What are the best tools that the best people have done? An example, I have a chapter in there as a tools, creating your ideal day. How do you do that? Where do you do it? I mean, people say, oh, that's great. Show me how to do it. And I always say an ideal day starts the night before. You and I have talked about this. And you walk through the next day, the night before. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? And you mentioned it earlier, Dave, the intentionality. And people think that people who have great lives, they just wake up and do it. No, I think a lot of people have become intentional, but they don't talk about it. And so what I tried to do is to take the best tips. I just talked about the ideal day. I have another one called an ideal week. How do you create an ideal week, an ideal month, an ideal year? And what we're really getting at is to answer this question: what would my life look like if it really turned out great? So that's where in coaching and in a lot of my talks, I take people to the end of their life, come back and say, okay, I live today. What do I have to do between now and the time I transition from this earth to create a really great life? Again, that's not the stuff we talk about at the cocktail parties. What do we talk about, Dave? Hey, Dave, did you get that new BMW? I got the 5 Series. Are you driving the 7 Series? Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But 3 hours of that, you kind of think, at least I think, God, I feel like I'm talking and eating junk food all night.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's rare for people to open up in normal communication, but that's where I think it growth happens, when you're able to really understand somebody, and unpack things with other people. And that's what I like about this venue right here, Joe, is, for the people that get to listen, they've just gotten a kind of a glimpse into a different way, maybe than they're used to looking at things. We're not saying that they have to do anything. I mean, this is just exposing people to a different way, and I'm hoping that people take to heart what you shared today. If you were gonna, as we start to come in for a landing here, if you had a tip of the week, if it was Joe Sweeney's tip of the week, what would it be for anyone listening? Whether we covered it before, exactly, just one, okay?
Okay, I'll do this. Okay, yes. This is I'm in my office. I'll just show you. Here's my 2 tips. I look at this every day. The first one, for all you entrepreneurs and salespeople, I look at this every day: initiate. Perfect. I mean, I say I've done a lot of things. I've never really had a job. I think I'm unemployable, but I try to initiate every day. But I think my thought for the week, that's great. I have a lot of people who I try to emulate their lives, people I respect that a lot of them are dead. And I have a wall here of 30 people that I look at every day that I call it my, see if I can show it up there. You can see it up there above the fireplace. Yep. I call it my virtual board of directors. I'll just focus in on one guy, and it'll be the tip of the week. This is a guy, John Wooden, basketball. John Wooden, I've studied his life. I've read 24 books on his life, was, in my opinion, the finest college men's basketball coach of all time.
Totally agree.
Younger people, you might not remember, but he won 10 national championships. His number one trait in life, the guy could have had the biggest ego. His number one trait was humility. He said, humble people don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less. And my mantra, what I do every day, I've got this next to my bed. It's my screensaver, and I have it right here in my office. It says this: you haven't lived a perfect day until you've done something for another person who can never repay you.
Wow.
That's my favorite thing. I say that every day, and I wake up and I journal every day, and I write down, who are some people that I did things for today that could never repay me.
That's
And
awesome.
you know what I find out? I get paid back like 100 times.
Well,
Just happened.
that's so great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, this is the challenge if you're listening and you haven't really been focusing on other people. If you've been focusing on yourself, this has just been an encouragement to look at things a little bit different. I mean, the guy's company is Pay It Forward. So, find some ways. I want to challenge you if you're listening, find some ways to pay it forward. Find some ways to think of other people first. It's so easy for us to be self-centered. I get that. I just appreciate, all that you've shared today, Joe, on that, because I'm hoping that, little by little, we as a society, if one entrepreneur listens to this and they go out of their way to do something special for somebody else, then you know what? This was, to me, was worth it. So,
Dave, why don't we end this way? Why don't we go to your listeners, and for the first 10 people
okay,
that respond to you, where you figure out the rules,
sure.
they will receive, and I'll send these to you. You send me your address. Your first 10 people, you can create a contest or whatever, that write you, that connect with you, will get a free copy of Networking as a Contact Sport. And I'll send you 10 books, and we'll get them out to your listeners. How's that?
That's awesome. And I will match that, and then we'll do I'll buy 10 of Moving the Needle from you, because I want there to be a choice. So anybody watching, anybody listening, the first 20 people, Joe's got 10, I got 10, and we're going to, again, hopefully make a difference. The only challenge response is you have to read this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with you and make sure you read it. So, because I don't like people ordering books and then they don't read them. So thank you for that. We'll work out the details, and I'll get Katie, the producer, involved, and we'll get that going. One last question, and then I'm gonna let you go. What's one thing that most people don't know about you that you feel comfortable sharing in this, Joe?
Oh God, is this therapy, Dave?
Could be.
Boy, one thing that a lot of people don't know about. Let's see. For your listeners, probably a lot of them don't know me. Let's see. I'll start with my parents. My parents wanted to have a baby girl, and they said they tried or they have one. My parents popped out 9 straight boys.
Oh.
And the 10th was finally a girl. I'm the number 9th son. So I'm basically I always say I'm a skinny white kid from a bad gene pool. But what most people don't understand, they think I'm very sensitive and that. I've spent the first half of my life getting the crap kicked out of me the first 5 hours of the day. So you were really nice, Dave. I said, usually I get abused. I'm used to it for the first couple hours of the day, just because I had 8 older brothers who beat me up. So.
Well, and it's so funny. I'm the exact opposite. I'm an only child, so I have no clue about having the crap beat out of me that way. So mine happens in other ways. That's probably.
No, I've got 8 great older brothers. They're
nice.
Awesome. So I'm joking, but I am the number 9th son out of 10 kids.
Wow, that's so cool. Joe, if somebody wants to learn more about you, wants to learn more about Pay It Forward Enterprises, wants to purchase books from you after we give our 20 away, what's the best way for someone to get?
Go to joe@joesweeney.com. If you need anything there, we've got it's a well-developed website. I think it's pretty good. I had a great marketing company put it together, and if there's anything we can do to help you on your journey, that's why we exist.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Man, I took a ton of notes. Oh my gosh, this is so valuable information. Thank you for letting us get a glimpse into your life, and so cool, all the people that you come in contact with. Hopefully some of that will rub off on the listeners today. And if you have questions and you want to ask Joe, please, joe@joesweeney.com. Jump on that. Let them know that you heard it here, and we'll be more than happy to, help any way they can. If you need anything from me, as always, feel free to jump on my website as well, positivepolarity.com. And with that, Joe, thank you again so much for all your wisdom, and I'm honored to share the state of Wisconsin with you, and hopefully we'll be out and about soon, and we'll be able to, share a stage together or share a conference together, just anything.
Or a beer. Or a beer.
Yeah, or here, right? Zoom again, exactly. So thanks again for all your wisdom,
Dave.
and I look forward to talking with you soon.
We'll be in touch.
Take care.
Thank you.